Seth Davis of CBS and also Turner Sports back here on the Rich Eisen Show. How you been, Seth?
Good to talk to you, Rich. I guess the Super Bowl's over.
Yeah.
Now I get to talk to the
Yes.
big time guys now, huh?
Well, I mean,
it.
and then just as football exits stage left, leaving the stage to college basketball because the NBA is on its All-Star break, my coach throws a hand in the handshake line, and all holy heck ensues. What'd you think of that and the suspension that Juwan Howard received, Seth?
Well, I mean, clearly it was most unfortunate for Juwan to lose his cool like that, and it's not the first time. You know, this happened last year when he kind of went after Mark Turgeon, the then Maryland coach, and kind of had to be restrained, which I've never seen a coach do that. I mean, coaches jawing at each other in the handshake line or getting ticked off at each other or saying things is hardly unusual, but to have a coach need to be physically restrained from going after another coach and then, landing a slap/punch on another coach, I've never seen that. And I think in retrospect, Rich, the school made a big mistake in not coming down on Juwan the last time. And when you sort of enable that type of behavior, then you're basically telling someone, hey, as long as you win games, you can get away with a lot of things. We saw that for countless years down the road in Bloomington. I don't know Juwan Howard well. He's a little hands-off with the media. Certainly, when I've been around him, I've liked him very much. I'm incredibly impressed by him. He's done an amazing job at Michigan. He's an incredible asset in many, many ways for college basketball. So I hope he learned his lesson that he can't keep doing this. And frankly, I think the school in the Big Ten got it right. I think 5 games is very serious, particularly this time of year for a team that's on the tournament bubble and fighting to play for its postseason. I think, anything more than that, firing him, in my opinion, would have been excessive. So hopefully, he learns from this and they can move on.
So I will ask you the topic that was red hot 48 hours ago, but I'm having you on now, so I'll ask it now. What do you think of the conversation sparked by what happened, that the handshake line should just be done away with since it's a mere formality that is now being used to sort of like Festivus, airing of grievances and then feats of strength? What do you think, Seth?
Well, I'm very impressed with that old school classical literature.
Thank you, sir.
I got to dust off my classics to come on your show.
Thank you, sir.
I hate that argument, Rich. I love the handshake line. I'm a sportsmanship nerd. I've got 3 sons who are all playing sports. My oldest son is a high school senior. They got knocked out of the playoffs last night, a very painful way for his senior year to end, and they had a handshake line, and he had to shake hands with the team that beat him, and I like that. 99.99% of the time, the handshake lines are completely uneventful. So my take is that if you can't handle the handshake line, you probably don't belong, certainly in college sports. I believe that athletics is education, and I believe that, if you lose a game, you should be mentally strong enough to look your opponent in the eye, shake that person's hand, and say, congratulations, good game, we'll try to get you next time. It's respect for your opponent, it's respect for the game, and I'm very much in favor of it.
Seth Davis here of CBS Sports and The Athletic and so much more here on The Rich Eisen Show. So let's turn the page to Wednesday night, and Michigan taking on Rutgers with Phil Martelli, the old hand from St. Joe's, and a lot of fans who might have been wondering where Phil went. And then they tune in tonight, they'll be like, oh, yeah, I remember that guy. He only won over 440 games for St. Joe's, right? And so he's going to be the man there in this unique position. And part of what I was, disappointed in, one of the many things I was disappointed in about what Juwan Howard wrought by throwing that hand is 2 players are now suspended for a game. And we're seeing this moment in the handshake line over and over and over again, and it's embarrassing more and more times that I see it. And this is a bubble team. They flat out 14-11, needing every W they can get here on out for the last 5 remaining Big Ten regular season games. What do you think of the position that Michigan finds itself in starting tonight, Seth?
Well, one of those players, Moussa Diabate, was coming off a career-high 28 points in a win over Purdue. I mean, he's a very talented recruit, a little bit raw, but, it was funny watching, I don't say funny, but it was fascinating watching that game. It was like you could literally see, I'm like, the light just went on with this kid. And they have a great center in Hunter Dickinson who's learned to step away from the basket. So it's most unfortunate. And, people may not be aware, but if you throw a punch, it is an automatic one-game suspension. There's no deliberation about that. And again, why wouldn't he throw a punch? His head coach just told him it was okay, and physically. So yeah, it's super unfortunate. And they're playing now. It's good that they're in Ann Arbor, so that'll help. Maybe the pregame meal at Zimmerman's can get them going. But they're playing a Rutgers team that has been an amazing story, and they play a very physical brand of basketball. In fact, Rich, I didn't know this at the time, but because in light of what happened, this emerged on Twitter. When Rutgers beat Michigan at Rutgers, Diabate had to be restrained at the end of that game and had to be kind of pulled into the locker room because he was upset. So, he's a kid. He's playing his way through it. But Michigan does not have a ton of margin for error. Now, I will say that the committee does take into account these things, with personnel injuries or someone's out for COVID or there in a couple of games where teams didn't have their head coach. So if Michigan is like right on the bubble and they lose this game, the committee has the latitude to say, they didn't have their starting power forward and they didn't have their head coach, but there's only so far that's going to take. At some point, you got to win enough games, and that's what Michigan is up against right now.
Yeah, Illinois. Who would love to stick the dagger in more than Izzo and Michigan State, right? In a couple of games, a visit to the Ohio State. I can't forget the to finish up. It's not an easy road.
It's a brutal league. They could go 0-5 the rest of the way, and that would make the decision very easy for the basketball committee.
How dare you, Seth? How dare you?
I'm sorry. No, 4 out of 5, they're at home.
No, I know that. So who else? Seth Davis here on the Rich Eisen Show. Who else is on that bubble of teams that have been successful recently or long term? Who else do you think is in danger here?
Well, the one that really comes to mind is North Carolina, who's very quietly had a very, very disappointing year. Hubert Davis is first. Right now, they only have one quad one win, and that's hard to get into the tournament with that. I remember in the old RPI days, it was top 50 wins, and I always felt like the magic number was 3. If you were a bubble team and you have 3 top 50 wins, because the good wins have, I think, greater weight than bad losses. Every bubble team has bad losses. That's why Rutgers is a fascinating case, because they have a ton of bad losses, but also a lot of really, really good wins. 5 quad one wins for Rutgers. So, Carolina's up against it. Indiana is up against it. The question of whether or not the Big Ten can get 9 teams, because the ACC is probably only going to have 3. We could have a situation where the Mountain West and the West Coast Conference both have more teams in this tournament than the ACC. I don't think either of us thought we'd live long enough to see that, but it's been that kind of season in college basketball.
Can you explain to people what the hell a quad one win is? Can you do that, please?
Thank you. That's a great nerd question.
What the hell? What is it?
A quad one win. So
where does it come from? Who decides what is
everything. I decide everything. I make if I decide everything, there'd be 0 replays in any sports. That's a conversation for another day. Okay. So it used to be the RPI ranking.
Right.
Now they've changed that to what they call the net ranking, which uses the more predictive analytic models. The RPI was a little bit out of date. So, scoring margin comes in a little into effect. But people misread it because they say, what a team's overall ranking in the net is not relevant. It's what they do against other teams. Right?
Okay.
So, and they also wanted to make home and away a factor. So, a quad one win,
yes,
is a win over a team or loss, a quad one game. If you're at home, the opponent is ranked 1 through 30 in the net. If it's a neutral court, the opponent is top 50 in the net, and if it's a road game, it's top 75 in the net. And then so quad 2, home 31 to 75, neutral 51 to 100, away 76 to 135. So it's an organizing tool, because this 25-2 team is obviously not the same as this 25-2 team. So how do you quantify that? That's where all these numbers.
And quad is what? It's just a college campus term. Quad, like I'm serious. I'm fascinated by this stuff. Who decides this? Is like Lenardi drops some peyote and then hangs out with a bunch of people and they shotgun beers. Yeah, Lenardi Peyote is a great fantasy team name. Chris Brockman's writing it down right now. Honestly, who decides this stuff?
There's a committee, the same committee that selects the tournament.
Yes.
It's quadrants, by the way. So it's quad 1, quad 2, quad 3, quad 4.
Quadrants.
You don't want any quad 4 law. Quadrants, yes.
Okay,
quadrants.
very good. Okay.
I don't know what a quad is for sure. I guess if it's a 4-sided piece of grass on campus, that's considered a quad.
Sure, right, yes, right.
I wasn't smart enough to get
For instance, Seth, when I was at school, I had no quad 1 wins. I had no wins in any quad. It was terrible. That's why I wrote for the student newspaper.
That's right.
It didn't help.
I had no quad wins. No quad 1 wins.
We could get, if we're getting competitive, we could get into Jewish summer camp.
Did we ever battle an intercamp game, Seth Davis? Is that your?
So.
Okay.
Were you Trails End? Remind me.
I was Trails End. Yeah. What were you?
Trails End. I was Equinunk.
Oh, we definitely. Yeah. How old are you, Seth?
We definitely.
How old are you, Seth?
You don't remember me dunking you on the big court?
I was keeping score, Seth. My
how old
God.
am I? I'm 51.
So this happened. You and I have played intercamp games before. It actually happened. Okay,
somewhere in a camp yearbook, there's me dunking on you on the big court.
So somebody comes up with this, and these metrics are then agreed to, and then what?
The same men's basketball committee that selects and seeds the bracket, they oversee a lot of the administration of the NCAA tournament, not just the bracketing. And so it's just a conversation over the years about how best really to take out the subjectivity, because once you start getting subjective, now it's like, well, who are you buddies with, and what conference are you in, and are you a high major, and are you this eye test thing is silly. And then it's also about valuing a non-conference schedule. Like they're trying to incentivize these high major teams to play good games in November and December, because otherwise, if you're in a power league, you could just play lousy teams at the start of the year and then know you're going to get enough opportunities for quality wins. Okay. So, it's been a conversation for total basketball nerds. And then, people who want to see this thing done well and fairly, and that's where we landed.
Well, I just want to make sure
I'll pay attention to all that, and I'll let you know what you need to know. I don't want you going down any rabbit hole.
That's what I'm saying. So I guess just to wrap up this conversation, what's a good number when I'm seeing you and everybody else talk about this, and this team has these quad 1 wins? What's a good number of wins, so many wins to have when you're on the bubble?
Yes. So if you're a bubble team, I would say 3 quad 1 wins is probably important. It's not make or break.
Right.
Some of these mid-major teams are not going to have that. Like Murray State is a top 25. I don't think they're going to be able to get 3 quad 1 wins, but they're also not going to have any bad losses. So
okay.
It's tough. I mean, they're sitting in that committee room, 10 men and women, and making these decisions, and there's a lot on the line. These kids have worked hard, and there's money at stake, and you want to find some way to level the playing field and look at the data in the way that's most reflective, and then just do the best you can and know that you're going to get ripped either way. Kind of like hosting a talk show.
That's
you're going to get criticized either way. You might as well say what you want to say.
Or intercamp games in the Pennsylvania Poconos like we did back in the day.
If people think that the NFL playoffs was exciting, I mean, they don't know what intercamp games
They have no
in
idea.
Wayne County, Pennsylvania.
That's what it was. Seth Davis, let's do this again shortly. You'll look for my call.
I'll be back. I love talking to you, Rich.
Thank you. Right back at you. That's Seth Davis, CBS Sports, The Athletic, and more right here. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.